Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Tip of the Week. In this video, I want to share with you 3 tips for popping spring colors inside ON1 Photo RAW 2020. So let's jump right in and get started. So my first tip for popping spring colors is a pretty basic one, but it can be really useful if you're wanting to apply adjustments to specific colors in your photograph. And that is to use the color enhancer filter. So if you're looking to just boost specific colors within your photograph, let's say a flower, for example, a good way to do that is to use the color enhancer filter. So we'll add a filter, we'll go in here and we'll choose color enhancer. And inside the color enhancer filter, you have all the abilities that you do inside of your develop tab inside the color area. But in the color enhancer filter, we also have the ability to modify our color ranges. So we have these different color ranges at the bottom from red to orange, yellow, green, so on and so forth. And within each of these color ranges, we can actually modify all of these different options for these specific colors. So if I zoom into this flower right here, I can see that there's some reds right there, there's some purples, there's some yellows. So it's a very colorful flower. And to really make the image pop, we can use this color enhancer filter and pull out some of the saturation in these specific colors. So let's do red first. I'll just zoom up to this red color right there. And I'll head to my color range. I'll choose this red option here. You can see it's chosen my red color. And now I'm going to head down here to my saturation, and I'm just going to pull this up. And you can see that by pulling up the saturation slider, it's really adding in a ton of color to the reds in my flower. So I'm just going to pull this up quite a bit, add in some more color to the reds. And then I'm going to go up to my hue, and I'm actually going to bring it right. And that's going to bring in a little bit of a lighter shade of red onto the flower. So if I turn this color enhancer off and on right now, in just 2 sliders, we've done a lot to these red tones in the image, and we can do even more. I'm going to head down here. I'm just going to pull up on my brightness a little bit, and that's going to brighten up the reds within the flower. You can also dim certain colors down by just pulling back on this brightness. But I'm just going to pull it up a little bit, maybe about there. And if you want to incorporate more red tones into the adjustment, you can actually pull up on this range slider here. And that's going to bring in more red tones onto that adjustment. So if there's a ton of different red shades on your image, you can use this range slider in here to kind of pick which range of reds you want the adjustment to be applied to. So now if I turn this off and on here, boom, we got a nice little pop in our reds there. And let's head over here and let's do these purple streaks now. So I'll head down to my color range area and I'll click on purple. So now we have the purple color selected. And I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'll just head down to my saturation and I'll just modify the saturation. I can see I can get pretty intense. Let's just do about right there, about 40. It's pretty intense, but just so you guys can see what's going on in the photo. And then I'm again going to use this hue slider and I'm going to bring these to the right, and that's going to make them a lot more pink. So I'll just bring these to the right like that. And then I'm going to make these a little bit brighter as well. So I'm going to pull up on the brightness slider like that. So now if I head up to my color enhancer and I turn this off and on, boom, it's helping a ton to make these colors pop in my photograph. And we can just keep moving along here. I'm going to use this for the yellows now. So I'll just go to my color enhancer filter. And one thing you can do with specific colors in your image, if you don't want to just choose the color range, or if you're not sure what color range it is, you can actually head down here to this color dropper, and this will allow you to drop on to a specific color and drag from left to right and actually apply an adjustment. So to choose the adjustment, you can click here. I'm going to choose adjust saturation. I'm going to click on this color dropper here, and I'm going to click on this shade of yellow. So now if I pull this to the right, you can see it's brightening up those yellows. It's adding in more saturation into that specific tone of color. If I pull it to the left, it's removing saturation from that area. So I'm just going to use this to pull it to the right a little bit, kind of to taste. That looks pretty good right about there. And you can see down here, it's increased our saturation value from 0 all the way up to 26 just by using that color dropper tool. And you can do the same thing with these other modifications. So if I want to adjust the brightness, I could click that color dropper again, click in here, make them brighter, dimmer. I think I'm going to actually dim them down just a hair. Nah, we'll brighten them up so we can see what it's doing. Maybe about right there. And then I'll modify my hue again. I'm going to pull it to the left, and that's going to make them a bit more orange. So now in my yellow color range, I've modified the saturation and the brightness with this color dropper, but I've modified the hue just with this slider here. And that's just to make these yellows a bit more orange on the flower. So if I click out of here, now if I turn this color enhancer off and on, you can see in the center we have a ton of pop of color, and we have a lot more color in these purples and in the yellow. And you can use this on whatever sort of image you want. You know, it could be flowers, people, whatever. And you can use this to really pull out all of those specific color tones within your photographs. My next tip for making spring colors pop is to use the color blend mode on your filters. That way it's only applied to the colors in your shot and it protects the tonalities. So if I add a filter here, one of my favorite filters for bringing on color and style is this LUTs filter. So by choosing the LUTs filter, the preset look is this blues color pop look. So if I turn this off and on, you can see it incorporates a nice bit of blue color cast onto the scene. And let's go over here to our category, or down to our LUTs rather, and let's go to this plastic punch one. So if I turn this off and on, it's really, really intense on the photograph. You can see it's brightening up this background a ton. It's adding in a ton of tonal contrast. But I really like what it's doing to the color in the shot. You can see here it's adding in some nice oranges over here. It's increasing the saturation in these fields and in the road. So if we only want to take the color from this filter and we don't want to take any of the tonality modifications, we can just head into this gear icon here. That's going to take us to our blending options for that filter. And we can go into our mode. And I'm going to head down to color. So now that I've chosen color, you can see it instantly takes away any of the tonality changes that were taking place and only applies the color from that filter onto my photo. So if I turn off this LUT, you can see immediately with that color blend mode, it's increasing the saturation of all the colors in the scene, and it has a nice little bit of color pop. And you can do this with any filter inside Photo RAW. So if I close out of this LUTs filter and we add another filter, I also like doing this with the photo filter. So inside the photo filter, I can actually choose a specific color to cast onto my shot. So I'm going to choose this color rectangle, and I'm going to choose sort of a warm red. Right about there. A warm orange color, I guess. And I'm going to head down to my amount. I'm going to pull it up quite a bit, pretty strong. And then I'm going to pull up on the saturation a little bit. And if I turn this off and on, obviously it's really, really intense on the shot, but that's because it's applying the entire filter. But if we apply the color blend mode to this filter by going into the gear icon, going into our mode, and heading down to color, you can see that it instantly takes away that kind of muddiness of the filter, and it applies the filter strictly to the colors within the scene. So now I can modify the opacity of this photo filter, and I can bring out a nice warm photo filter onto my shot just by using this color blend mode. So if I turn this off and on, a really quick way to incorporate a warm feel onto your shot, or even a colder type of feel onto your photo, we could go into this color and we could choose a blue color, and now you have kind of complete control of the color cast on your image. And my last tip for making spring colors pop is to use a color range mask to specifically apply a tonal adjustment to a specific color on your photograph. So if we add a filter, let's add the dynamic contrast filter, and let's add in a little bit of detail, but also a little bit of vibrance to the reds in this photograph. So if I zoom in here, let's go into our dynamic contrast filter, and let's add in a little bit of that small contrast here to kind of pop the textures in these flowers. But then let's head down here to our tone area in the dynamic contrast filter, and let's pull up on our vibrance to bring in a little bit more saturation into those reds as well. So if I zoom out now and I turn this dynamic contrast filter off and on, obviously that's really intense and it's a little bit oversaturated. But if we only want this dynamic contrast filter applied to these reds in here, we can use a color range mask to do that. So if I go to my dynamic contrast filter, I can access my masking options by just clicking on this little rectangle with a circle in it. And in here, we can go down to this color range option. And if I choose this, this will allow me to pick a specific color that I want this filter applied to. So if I choose this color dropper here, I'm just going to drop it on this shade of red right there. So if I head over to this dynamic contrast filter and I view my masks now, In white, it's showing me all of the areas that I have chosen to apply this dynamic contrast filter to. So I can see it's choosing those red areas on my scene, but I can also filter them out by heading to my color range, and if I pull back on it, it will remove some of those reds that were originally in the mask, and if I want to add any more of those color range tones in, I can just pull up on the color range slider. But for this photograph, I'm just going to pull back a little bit until we're really just applying this filter to those reds in the flower. So if I go to the View button here and I click this to view my photograph, and now if I turn my dynamic contrast filter off and on, that's an easy way to go into a specific color on your image and apply an adjustment and a color modification. So those are my 3 spring tips for making color pop in your images. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and stay updated whenever we drop new content or videos. Stay safe out there, everyone, and have a great weekend.